Welcome to another episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. Welcome back, my loves. I am your host, Loryn Denise, and I'm so happy to have you here. If this is your first time here, welcome. You made it. Oh my God. If this is your first time and you made it to the last episode, I appreciate you. I'm super thankful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you are listening again and you made it through all these episodes, welcome back. And thank you so much for just continuing to join me on this journey. Y'all, this is the last episode of season 1. Oh my gosh. Like, we made it 10 episodes. I know I keep saying I can't believe it, but honestly, like, this is the last episode, 10 episodes later, and here we are. I'm just thankful. I'm just thankful for every person who listens, every person who shares. I'm just thankful for you guys. So honestly, super shout out to y'all. Thank you so much for rocking with your girl. So on today's episode, I thought about it a lot. Like, how do I want to end this season? What do I want to really talk about? And we talked about so much this season, right? We've talked about all different types of grief, from the grief coming with coronavirus, being Black in America, to professional grief, to just understanding how to use social media and, just so much, right? So I'm like, how do I end off this season? Like, what do I talk about? Do I talk about a specific type of grief? Do I talk about the first, after a loss? Like, I really was going back and forth of how I close it up. And you know what? I was like, you gotta put a bow on it. You gotta wrap it up until next season. So I really wanted to talk about, understanding what the stages of grief are, understanding some myths that come with grief, and really understanding how to change that relationship with grief and some ways to get to the other side of it. Because I tell you guys all the time that you don't get over grief, you get through it, right? And so there is another side to it. And so I really want to talk about some ways to be able to get to that other side of it and just understanding how to change that relationship with grief. So, you know what? We're going to call this episode Wrap It Up. Woo, I tickle myself. So yeah, we're just going to wrap it up. We've talked about so much. So let's just wrap it up and talk about, what it means. Like, how do I do it? And I feel like just as a whole, as a world, or, as a nation or whatever, like, I feel like we're all collectively grieving, especially 2020, because it's so much going on. The death of Chad Boswick. I'm sorry. Black Panther, Chad Boswick. But that just happened recently. And, people are kind of rocked to the core. And there's a couple things I feel about that. I hate when people try and change the narrative of, the loss of the person. But that's a whole nother episode that I'll go into. But I just noticed that, again, people are grieving and they don't know what that means, or they're trying to not accept it, or whatever the case may be. So, coronavirus, we don't know what's going on. We just don't know, like, when it's going to end. We don't know when concerts are going to come back. We don't know when we're not going to wear masks. We don't know when kids are going to be able to go to school, when we're not going to be able to work from home. There's just so much grief happening collectively as a world. And I just want to make sure that people recognize those stages, understand there's myths associated with it, and really, like, trying to change that relationship and get through it to that other side of it. Right. And so that's why I really just wanted to do this episode and just kind of wrap up a lot of, what we talked about this season, and understanding grief before we get into season 2. Yes, there is a season 2. Yeah, I'm just super excited. So, yeah, we're going to dive into that. But first, I want to talk about the stages of grief. I'm sure that whether you're grieving or not, you've probably heard about, there's stages to grief. So there's two different, I guess, I don't want to say ideologies, but there's two different ideas of the stages. So some places, if you look it up and you read, they say there's 5 stages of grief, right? And then there's some other I guess, articles or information out there that says there's 7 stages. So the 5 stages, which is, I guess, more common, if you look it up, is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, right? So I'm like, okay, that sounds about right. So I'm like, what is this? Like, what are the other 2 when it comes to 7 stages? And, and all it is, I feel like the 7 stages, they just add like an extra word and they add like an extra like moment in time, which I appreciate, honestly, because I feel like for me, I feel like I relate more to the 7 stages than the 5. Again, the 5 stages obviously is something that you go through, but I think adding those 2 extra ones, I'm like, yes, this sounds about right. So the 7 stages are shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression, the upward turn, reconstruction and working through, and acceptance and hope. And so I really like those stages a little bit more because I think, again, it gives you more of a wider array of how you're going to feel. Like, I'm not saying that denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance is not enough, because all of those things are still within these 7 stages. I think just adding a couple more pieces gives you more of a like, yes, okay, that's where I'm at. That's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm that's where I'm at. And that's like to understand your feelings a little bit more. And so, of course, with shock and denial, like I feel like, again, right now, there's a lot of shock and denial going on just in the world with coronavirus. That's why you have so many people arguing back and forth about the mask and, all of these things, right? And then pain and guilt. There's a lot of, I feel like, pain right now, just in the world. And then you sometimes have that guilt of like, well, if I would have done this, would this have happened? And I know this happened a lot with me, and I can even say my sister, with my dad, like, because we were in the hospital so much, and we were kind of like, okay, well, if we would have done this, or if we would have caught it earlier, if we would have said this, or so you start going through a lot of that. And then anger and bargaining. Of course, anger, everybody gets angry. You're like, why is this happening? This person's supposed to be here. I'm supposed to have this job. I'm supposed to be married to this person. I'm supposed to have this baby, right? You go into that and then you start bargaining, which, it's a funny example, but like, when you get like really intoxicated and you're like, God, if you just help me stop throwing up, I will never drink again. That's kind of, ooh, don't act like I've been there by myself. Okay. Listen, I know some of y'all listening have been there. Okay. You like, ooh, Lord, or you like to smoke, like, Lord, please, I just don't want to be high anymore. I won't do it again. Whatever your vice is. Okay. You start bargaining and say, okay, well, if I do this, then this is what will happen. Or, you just start going through these moments in your head to say like, okay, well, if this happens, then I'll get this back. And that's not how loss works. Like, a loss is a loss, right? Like, it is what it is. And that goes back to my last episode. It's accepting, like, it is what it is. Like, that's just what it is. But we do go through those moments of bargaining to try and like bring back or reconcile or whatever the loss, right? Depression. And it's funny because people are like, I wasn't depressed. And I'm like, well, I think depression, I know depression looks different for everybody. And I feel like when you do go through a loss, you go through that moment, right? And whether you acknowledge it or not is different. Now, I'll give you that. But I think everyone does have like a little stint. And just because, like, I think people hear depression, they're like, oh, you're in your bed, you're, crying all day. And that's not always depression. Like, you hear all the time when people smiling and whatever, and then they commit suicide, right? Like, you just don't know. And so I do feel like that everyone does have that moment of depression every now and then. And so you can't say like, oh, well, I wasn't depressed. Okay, that's fine. To each its own. But if you just happen to look up other signs of depression, just go ahead and, never say never. That's all I'm gonna say. The upward turn. I really love this one, again, in the 7 stages, because there is like some moment, and I can't like really pinpoint in myself when it happened. I feel like I definitely know it was at some point in therapy, but there is some type of upward turn to say, you know what, I'm going to change again how I have a relationship with grief. And so you make a change to say, I'm tired of being sad, or I'm tired of being here, or I'm tired of not knowing, or I'm tired of just being whatever. And so you kind of change your trajectory to say, you know what, I'm not going to continue to be in this pit of grief, because because grief has, pits and valleys. I'm not going to continue to be in this pit of grief, and I want to get out of it. And so that's when that upward turn hits. And again, for me, I think it was definitely some point in therapy. But it could just be whatever could make you have that upward turn. It could be a moment to say, you know what, I'm going to be better for my kids, or I'm going to be better for my husband or wife, or I'm going to be better, at my job, or I'm going to be better for my family. Hell, I'm going to be better for myself. And that's really what it comes down to, is you need to be better for yourself. And so that's when the upward turn comes in, and it's an amazing thing. And that's what brings you to that reconstruction and working through it. Right. And I, again, spoke about on the last episode of really like rebuilding and having those steps to, being, who you are. Right. It's a beautiful thing to kind of, reconstruct yourself. And it's not beautiful or like sexy to work through it. But, when you're rebuilding and you're reconstructing who you are in your life, that's what makes it beautiful, right? Because working through those emotions, having to face yourself, having to face those sad emotions, having to face those happy emotions, just having to face you is a lot. Because essentially that's what grief is. It's a journey with you. It's not necessarily a journey with you and your husband, you and your wife, you and your kids, you and whoever. It's a journey with you. And so having to work through that and rebuild and reconstruct yourself is a beautiful journey, but it's not, pretty as you go along, because facing you is scary. And I can only tell you that because I had to do that. And I'm not like a terrible human being, but I did have to face me. And, I actually started I found a new therapist, started last week, and she's really been having me face me, and it's been scary. Like, again, I'm not like a terrible human being. I'm not like, ugh, like you're garbage, but there's just things that I had to face and questions that she asked me. And I'm like, oh my God, like, girl, but it's been great. To be able to have someone to say, okay, well, let's talk about this. And like, you need to face you. But again, it's, just being a better you, having that upward turn, reconstructing yourself and working through it. And then the last one is acceptance and hope. And so again, that goes back, I keep, just referencing my last episode, but it's true, like accepting the loss and moving forward into that new season and having hope to say there's going to be a brighter day. There's going to be better days. There's going to be amazing moments that I'm going to continue to create, right? Accepting that, accepting the loss, moving forward, not forgetting, not saying, screw it, F it. Like, it's just moving forward into that new season of life and understanding that there is beauty on the other side of grief once you get through it, once you get through, all of those kind of nasty pieces of it. So some myths that are associated with it. This one I think is so funny. The pain will go away faster if you ignore it. And I think it's something that you all go through with grief, right? And I'm not saying like you guys, I mean like us. So that we all go through, shall I say, with grief. Sometimes we're like, okay, like we try and ignore it, or we try not to acknowledge it, because again, it's not a pretty thing. It's not something that we ever want to talk about. It's not something that's exciting. Until now, it's not been a safe space to talk about it. I feel like I've talked about it obviously a lot more with me going through it and with my friends or anybody who I know has gone through it. But even in the year 2020, a lot of people are experiencing it. And so they, are either ignoring it or trying to understand it. And so that's why I really wanted to create this safe space to do it. But it's not going to go away faster if you ignore it. The thing about healing means it's necessary to face it head on, or to face your grief, right? In order for you to heal, you have to face it. You ignoring it is not going to make it go away. Let me tell you, because I have tried to do that. Like, well, okay, well, maybe I'm feeling sad and I try and ignore it. It doesn't mean it's going to go away. It's just going to make it worse in the long end. In the long end, because it's like those people who hold stuff in all the time and then they explode. That's exactly what you're doing when you're trying to ignore this grief. All of a sudden it's going to hit you like a train or like a Brinks truck. And I promise you, it is not going to feel good. And you are going to be on the floor, in the bed, like not understanding how to process your feelings. So in order for you to heal, you have to just face it head on. And it's not going to be easy. And there's plenty of tools out there to be able to help you with that, in which I'll get into, but you just have to face it head on. Another myth is it's important to be strong in the face of loss. So I had to learn this because I am the quote unquote strong one of the family, or the strong friend or whatever, right? And so I had to put on face to be like, okay, like you're good. Like even doing this podcast, right? Like I had to be strong to say like I'm helping people with grief. Like you can't have moments. Like what's wrong with you, right? And I'm like, girl, yeah, you talking about grief. And so like be real about it. And so I had to like not be strong sometimes, even in this process. And even, it's I still struggle with it. And again, therapy, thank God. I still struggle with it, with my family of having those moments of weakness. But like with my older sister, I really have like a lot of moments of weakness with her. And just not being strong. Like I call her just like crying, or like I can't do this. Like I'm tired, like I'm exhausted. And I had to understand to allow myself to just feel however I want to feel. Like, for example, this past week was my dad's um or the 1 year anniversary of my dad passing, right? And so people kept calling me, like, how do you feel? Texting me, things like that. And I just explained to one of my friends, I said, you know what? I am just allowing myself to feel however I feel. And that's moment by moment. So right now I'm talking to you, I'm cool. In 5 minutes, I could be sad and I'm allowing myself to feel that. Or I could be angry and I'm allowing myself to feel that. Or I could feel nothing and I'm allowing myself to feel that, right? Like I had to understand it's not about being strong and being the person who like holds it all together. It's about allowing yourself to just feel however you feel. And that's, you can be day by day, it can be moment by moment, it can be whatever it is, right? Just allow yourself to feel how you feel. And you don't always have to be strong. It's okay. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. You don't always have to be strong because it's not something light to carry. It's not easy. So, don't feel like you always have to be strong. Even if you are always strong, don't feel that way. Um, Another myth is if you don't cry, it means you aren't sorry about the loss. That's garbage. That's garbage. Everyone processes things differently. Everyone handles their emotions differently. And I don't remember, I think I did share with you guys how when my dad passed away, how, I just go on go mode. Like I just got to get everything done. Like it's about getting it done. It's about getting the funeral together, the life insurance, like all of these things need to happen simultaneously in a matter of 10 days from the time that my dad died to the time we had the funeral. So I'm just in go mode, right? And a friend said to me, oh, well, if I didn't know you, it would feel like you didn't care about your dad because I haven't seen you like shed a tear. Okay, first of all, I did shed several tears. Now, was it in front of you? Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I didn't cry. And second of all, even if I didn't cry, doesn't mean that I don't grieve the loss of my father. Like, what are you saying to me? Right? But that's, again, a myth in a what society has deemed as like grief is this bad, scary thing, and you gotta just lose your mind and your marbles. No, cut it out. Okay, cut it out. Yes, it is a sad thing. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you gotta cry all day and all night. And if you cry in front of people, cool. And if you cry at home, cool. If you don't cry at all, okay. However you process grief is how you process it. That doesn't mean that it has to look like what everybody else wants it to look like, right? And so again, that does not mean you're not sorry. So don't, if you haven't cried, don't look at yourself like, okay, do I really care? Did I care about, X, Y, and Z? Or do I even, don't look at yourself like you're crazy. Okay. Everyone processes their emotions differently and everyone handles emotions differently. So don't feel like if you did not cry about whatever loss that something is wrong with you or that you are not grieving that loss. Do not let society tell you that's what it is. Okay. Another myth, which is silly, is that grieving should last about a year. I don't even know who made this up. Again, garbage. All of these are garbage, right? All of these myths are ridiculous. Grieving is a journey, right? And I feel like that grieving, I don't even want to say it's a lifelong journey, but it really is a journey. It could be days, it could be months, it can be years, right? It's not up to it's kind of up to you, but it's really not up to you. If that makes sense. Like grieving is, you're like, okay, I don't want to grieve anymore. I'm going to choose not to ignore it. I'm going to face it head on, right? And so then you're like, cool. I'm on the other side. I'm good. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're great. You're living life. Woo, I'm in my new season of life. And the grief's like, hey, How you been? What's up? Go somewhere. Okay. So, grieving is just a journey. And again, when you're going through those stages, that's what creates those moments in that journey of grief. And that'll take as little or as long as it does. And that's why I say, sometimes it is a lifelong journey, because you're going to have those moments and you're going to be like, dang, like I wish whatever, insert moment associated with grief. And it's okay. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It just matters that you're moving through it and you're processing it. That's what matters more. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't grieve for a year, or you can't grieve for 2 years, or you can't grieve for 5 years. Like, I hate when people are like, okay, it's time to move on. Listen, that will send me through the roof. Okay. Do not tell somebody it's time to move on from their grief. Help them move through their grief. Do not tell them to move on from it, because you're never going to move on from it. You're going to move through it. Okay. So which brings me to the next myth, which moving on with your life means forgetting about your loss. And again, I just hate the way that they say moving on, because you don't move on from it. You move through it, and you move through the grief. And again, like I talked about in the last episode, you accept the loss and you move forward, and you move through it to the other side of it. And you just move forward into that new season of life. And again, that doesn't mean that you're forgetting about your loss. That's not what it is. That's just accepting it and moving forward into that new season and understanding, okay, I accept this is the loss. Now I'm ready to move forward into this new season. And, I'm just ready to accept whatever that entails. And I know some days, it's going to be great, and some days it's going to be not so great. And I'm going to accept that and move through this moment and move forward into this new season of life. So those are some of the myths that, again, I'm just not a fan of. I just don't like them. But I'm actually going to talk about how you can change your relationship with grief right after this break. Are you listening to my podcast right now and wondering, I wonder if I can start a podcast like Loryn did? Well, I'm here to tell you that you most definitely can. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. So no monthly subscriptions, no hidden fees. It's free 99. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So no need to go out and buy hundreds of dollars equipment like I did. You can do it straight from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today, and let's get back to the show. I just had to take a brief moment out of this episode to thank y'all again for listening to This Too Shall Suck podcast. This journey has been nothing short of amazing. I have learned so much along the way. If you're enjoying the content and would love to hear more topics, have more guests, and just continue to help me grow this beautiful platform, head on over to my website at this2shallsuckpodcast.com and hit the donate button. Any amount I'm super thankful for, and it'll just continue to help me in my quest to share knowledge on grief, and just help people grow and heal during their process. So again, that's www.this2shallsuckpodcast.com and click the donate button. Thank you so much in advance for anything that you can give, and let's get back to the show. All right, you guys, we are back. And so now I'm just going to discuss how to change your relationship with grief and, some tools to help you get to that other side of grief. As I say, I'm not going to call it rainbows. I'm just not going to say that, but I'm just going to help you get to the other side of it. So, if you think about grief, you can think about it like a cloud, right? And I'm not saying a dark cloud, a fluffy cloud. We'll just say a cloud, right? So first you really try and outrun the cloud, or you try and wait out, for if it's raining, you try and okay, I'm gonna just wait. It's going to stop eventually. I'm gonna just chill over here. Or you try and hide from it, or you try and ignore it, right? Like I was talking about earlier. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna just chill here. I'm gonna run from the cloud. I'm gonna wait for a second. I'm gonna hide out and I'm gonna ignore it. So you're like, cool. And then eventually you realize, this cloud is about that life. Okay. It's not going anywhere. Cool, cool, cool. So you realize like grief it's not going to go anywhere. You can try and ignore it. You can try and act like it's not there. You can try and outrun it. You can try and do all those things, but then eventually you realize, you know what, this is not going anywhere. So, you can decide to continue to keep running from it, or you can decide to, take it face on. And when I say continue to run from it, that means some of those, which I'll talk about. I'm so excited to talk about it next season. Some of those unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like for me, I was using alcohol and I was using sex and I wasn't using drugs, but, some people use different ways to try and not face it and to outrun it. And so you may drink a lot, or you may have sex a lot, or you may smoke a lot, or you may, do drugs a lot. There's things that you do that you just don't acknowledge it. And so you can decide whether you're going to continue to run from it or take it face on. And once you do decide, which you eventually will have to, because grief will be like, hey, girl, I'm going to continue to stay here. So what you going to do? So, once you do decide to take it face on and experience it, it can consume you. And I think that's what's the scary part, is why people don't want to, face it, they don't want to acknowledge it, because it can consume you. And oftentimes it will consume you, because now you're like, okay, let me accept it. And now you're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how to function. I can't really see the other side. So now this cloud of grief is now you're inside of it. You're in the thick of it, as I say, right? And so now you can't really see to the other side, because you're just in the middle of this cloud. I don't see, where I came from. I don't see the other side of it. Like, I'm just consumed. And so like early on in that stage, you often feel drained, you feel tired, which I can imagine a lot of us are feeling right now from 2020. Like, you're just like, oh my God, like every month, every week, it's always something. Jesus. So you feel like drained, you feel tired, and you feel like, all the light that is in the world, is in your world, is drained, and that everything is dark. And you're just like, is there ever going to be sun? What's the song? The sun will come out tomorrow. Is it Annie? Is it going to come out? Like, you just are like, oh my gosh, like this can't, like, no, this can't be it. Like something's got to give. So then you start seeing, little beams of light coming through, that cloud, right? Like they're poking through the cloud. So it may be, a beautiful experience you had, or a child coming through, or, a new job, something. You start seeing these little beams of light coming through to you, and you're like, okay, you start seeing them every now and then, and you start to realize, you know what? I think I can manage this a little bit more. I think I can maneuver this cloud a little bit more. I know I'm inside of it, but I think I can learn how to manage it, because I'm seeing these little beams of light come through. So there's something outside of here that is coming through, that's shining a light, that's giving me a piece of hope, and, giving me a little bit of brightness, right? And, I'm like, okay, I can manage this. So you're like, I can manage this. You can manage it through talking to your friends. You can manage it through, therapy. You can manage it through going to church. Like there's ways that now you're looking at like, okay, I can manage this a little more, because you're seeing those beams of light coming through that cloud. And so then eventually, what you do is you grow less intimidated by this big cloud or by grief, right? You start to feel more confident in how you're going to handle it, how you're going to handle its ups, its downs, its twists and its turns, because it's all of that. Because there's so many moments that are up, but then there's moments that are down. And then there's moments that you're like, okay, I'm up. And then there's like a twist and you're like, and then, you're down, and then there's a turn and you're back up, right? But you feel better in being able to handle that cloud and being able to maneuver that cloud and move it through the sky how it needs to go, right? Like you start to handle all of those different things. And so you just eventually grow less intimidated by it. And you just start to feel more confident about handling all of those things. And then you start seeing, eventually what happens is you start seeing some of those good things in grief. You start noticing and appreciating some of those things that happen from it, like some stronger, you might get some stronger relationship from it. I think I shared with you guys that a lot of my friendships have grown a lot stronger, and I've always had strong relationships, but they have grown so much stronger in the midst of my grief, because I started acknowledging them and really appreciating them, right? You start to see things like motivation, like, okay, you know what? Like I'm motivated to do X, Y, and Z because of this grief, right? Like I'm motivated to make my parents proud, or I'm motivated to, grow from this divorce, or I'm motivated to want to try and have a baby again, right? There's different things that can happen. So you start noticing those good things, and you really notice your change of perspective, right? Like when you have a loss, you typically change your perspective on life, because especially when you've had like a major loss to your life, you start looking at things way differently. Like certain things, I'm like, I don't, do you know like what I've been through? I don't care nothing about it. Like you just start changing your perspective, and things that may have bothered you before, things that have knocked you down the past, you may be like, oh, I'm not even about to be acknowledging that, because it's right, because you just have a different, more positive change of perspective. And so you start acknowledging those things, right? You start seeing those things, and you start, realizing that grief grows from the same seed of love. And we've talked about this a couple times now, that all grief is love misplaced. And so you realize that grief grows from the same seeds of love. It's just all about how you water it and how you take care of it. And that, kind of dictates how it's going to grow. Right. So, once you realize that, now you start to realize like your relationship with grief is changing, right? You start, first you were trying to hide from it. First you were trying to ignore it. Then you realize, okay, I can't hide from it. I can't ignore it. So now you're in this cloud, and you're like, I can't see anything. I'm consumed by it. And you're starting to feel drained. You're tired. But then you start seeing these little beams of light coming through, and you're like, okay, I think I can manage this, because obviously outside of here, there's other things, that are bringing light and bringing joy outside of this cloud. And so then you start becoming less intimidated by this cloud. You're like, okay, cloud, I may be in here, but now you're moving towards the other side of the cloud. You're starting to see the other side, and you're like, you know what? I can handle these things. I can handle how we're moving through the world. Like I'm starting to notice these beams of light, these strong relationships, these motivation, and understanding that, what, all this is a seed of love. It's just how I water and take care of it. It's how it's going to grow. And so now you realize that your relationship with grief has changed. Honestly, it's changed. Now, like for me, and you will too, see that it's a beautiful and complex, and it has so many nuances to it, right? That it's, although it is challenging at times, and it seems to always, let me tell you, grief always comes at the most inopportune or random times. I mean, honestly, like it's like right now, grief, I was minding my business. I had a great day. I did it. I got a promotion. I got this. And then you go home and you're like, yeah, about that. I'm just going to lay down. Like it always comes at the most inopportune or random time. But you know what? You eventually just embrace it and you face it head on. Like, you know what? I had a great, amazing day today, but right now I'm just not feeling it. That goes back to letting yourself feel however you feel, and you embrace that, right? But before, you would see that and you're again and that's that dark cloud, and you don't see the other side. Now you're like, you know what? Okay, like this is just a moment in time. Allow yourself to go through that moment and let's move forward. That's it. And so you really just start to understand, like now, you're at the end of the cloud, or you're out of the cloud, right? So now you really start to understand what's on the other side of grief. And again, I'm not going to sit up here and act like it's rainbows and sunshines and Care Bears. That's not it. That's not it. All it is just having a better understanding of how to navigate this new world and this new normal. That is your reality. That's all it is. And that's all that's all it means. And when I say changing your relationship with grief and understanding that you're going to get through that dark cloud, and just understanding how to navigate it. That's it. It's not, I can't sit up here and act like, yeah, when you get to the other side of grief, it's like, yes, it is amazing to get out of that thick of it and to get through those moments that are not, the greatest, right? But what I'm going to say is that I just know how to navigate this new normal and this new reality that I'm in. That's it. And that's what makes it beautiful. And that's what makes it amazing. And so, that's what I have to say about changing your relationship with grief. And I think it's something that we all can do. It's something that I've had to do. And I know a lot of people are having to do now. And I want you guys to be able to really change that relationship, especially now, again, in 2020 with all that's going on. And so I want to give you guys some ways to get to the other side of it, get to that side where you are able to navigate it, your new world or the new normal that is your reality. So I've said this the whole episode, and I've said it, several times throughout this season. Really just face your feelings, face it head on. However you're feeling, that's cool. Like, face it and just be like, you know what? This shit sucks. You know what? 2020 is garbage. Or not even 2020. I hate to keep saying that. Let me not say that because, it could be way worse, right? But for you, like 2020 is not good, right? And just face that and say, you know what? This is how I feel. I feel unhappy. I feel sad. I feel whatever. I don't feel good. Or you can say, you know what? I feel good today. And I'm glad that I feel good today. Face your feelings. Face however you're feeling. That's okay. Not a problem. Another way is to express your feelings in a tangible or creative way. And so for me, that was creating this podcast, right? It could be journaling, it could be scrapbooking, it could be creating music, it could be whatever. But express your feelings in a tangible way because it's something that you can see and say, you know what? Like you can go back and be like, wow, like I've grown a lot. Or what, I was feeling this way today and I feel this way tomorrow. Like, wow, like, it's giving yourself almost check marks to see how much you've grown because you're going to go through the process. You're going to grow. You don't have a choice but to, right? Because that goes back to watering that seed. It just depends on how you water it is how you're going to grow. But, being able to see that and just having those moments. So another way is to try and maintain your hobbies or interests or pick up some new ones, which we've spoken about this season is, here's the thing, like routine is comfort, right? Because now you're in this space of a new normal. So trying to create some type of routine, whether it's from the past or creating a new one, it gives you a piece of comfort to say, okay, this is like a little piece of normal. Like I'm cool with that, right? So try and maintain that little piece. Of comfort for yourself. So again, trying to maintain whatever your hobbies or interests are, just going and picking up a new one. That's really going to help you be able to get to the other side of it. That goes to those beams of light that are coming through the cloud, right? You're seeing like, okay, like I really like bowling, or I really like I don't know, soccer, or I really like whatever. Those are those beams. That's giving you that piece of comfort to see the other side of it. And this is one that people really don't talk about, right? We always talk about the mental health piece of it, but like really taking care of your physical health. And I can tell you this because I did not take care of my physical health. I allowed myself to have some unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? That's with the alcohol and with, all of that. And so I wasn't taking care of my physical health. I was eating out all the time. And I felt myself getting sick. I've been in the hospital like since my dad died twice. I didn't get admitted. Thank God. I've only been to the emergency room, but they were both stress induced. They were both like me eating bad or drinking too much. So that's really like something important is really taking care of your physical health, like your mental health. We always talk about that. And that is super important because if you don't take care of that, of course, but always take care of your physical health too, whether that's, they say going exercise or going to the gym, releases endorphins, which is like the happy part of you, right? And so really taking care of that's going for a walk if you're feeling stressed, or just going for 30-minute walk every day, or 10-minute walk, or however long, or going hard in the gym, doing a 30-day challenge, whatever it is. Like really take care of that physical health, because that's going to be able to help you get through it to that other side, because you're again releasing these endorphins and you're not putting yourself in a more compromised situation like I was, allowing stress to, I'm a stress eater, right? And so allowing myself to eat bad and drink and do all those things, allowing that moment and that stress from grief to really like hinder my physical health. So that's super important. I can't, honestly, harp on that enough. Take care of your physical health. Plan ahead for those grief triggers. So when I mean grief triggers, like typically like after a loss, the first, I call them the first, and I'll talk about this on a later episode. Like the first are always like the ones that are the hardest. So the first after any loss, again, whether divorce, whether loss of a person, whether loss of a job, the first are always the hardest. So like a grief trigger for my family is holidays. And so last year was God, it was terrible because my dad passed away in August, and then it was holiday season. So it was, my birthday came up. That was a trigger, believe it or not, like my birthday was a trigger. Like, wow, like my parents aren't here and I'm about to go celebrate. what? Like my friends literally had to be like, Loryn, like we're gonna do something. Cause I was like, I don't even feel right celebrating. Right. That was a trigger. Or, Thanksgiving, Christmas, any, birthdays, anything that you know are going to be triggers, plan ahead for them. And that doesn't mean that, things could go left or, things could change the day of. But like, for example, like my dad's anniversary, I knew it was coming up this past week. And I was like, okay, all right, so this is what we're going to do. Are we going to work? Are we going to take off? Like, like just trying to figure out what we need to do. My family and I ended up getting together and it was a great time. And that's a way for us to plan ahead, to say like, okay, today might be hard, but if we're all together and we're celebrating, his life, then we're good. Right. But again, just plan ahead for those things. That doesn't mean it's going to go right. I want to keep, emphasizing that. That doesn't mean that you're like, okay, all right, today I'm not going to be sad. That's not what I mean. That just means like, listen, this day is coming up. Be aware of that. Have a plan for the day. And if the plan doesn't go that way, that's okay too. But at least, like going into it, like, this is the plan. This is what we're going to try to do. You know what I mean? So plan ahead for those grief triggers. And the last way, which I think I've been saying it and I'm going to continue to say it, because this is really going to help you get to the other side, is don't let anyone, and I mean anyone, I don't care who it is, tell you how to feel. And when I mean anyone, I mean you as well. Don't tell yourself how to feel. Just feel. That is going to help you so much. When I really learned and understood, and this is something I kind of had to learn on my own, is just feel, Loryn. Like, just feel. Like, if you feel sad, feel it. If you feel mad, feel it. If you feel happy, feel it. If you feel motivated, feel it. Like, just feel. Don't let anybody tell you how to feel when you're grieving. Don't tell yourself how to feel. Just feel and allow yourself to go through it. Because I promise you, it's going to just be so much better for you on the other side. And man, like, just allow, I think that is the most important thing. I don't even say the most important. One of the most important things that I've learned during this whole process is just let yourself feel, because people will be out here and tell you there's a right and wrong way to grieve, and there is not. I'm the first person to tell you, or last, I don't know, but I'm here to tell you that there is no right or wrong way to grieve. There isn't. So don't let anyone tell you that. And don't you tell yourself that. However you grieve is how you grieve. Now, like I told you before, there's healthy and unhealthy ways to grieve, but there's not a right and a wrong way. So nobody can sit here and tell you, oh, well, I hope that, this is better, or I hope you're grieving. No. How you grieve is how you grieve. And don't let anybody tell you different. And you don't tell yourself different. Just feel how you feel. And, again, like if you're like, okay, I've been feeling really mad lately, allow yourself to feel that, but then don't stay in it, or recognize that. Like for me, I had to recognize, like, you know what, you're angry with people who aren't even, who are supposed to be your friends, and you're mad at them for what reason, and that's when I realized I had to go and talk to somebody and get some help with that, because, I was feeling angry. Right. But I allowed myself to feel. And that's how I was able to acknowledge the fact that I needed to go and talk to somebody, because I allowed myself to feel. So honestly, just allow yourself to feel, y'all. I mean, I just want everyone, because we are in such a time, I just want everyone to really change their relationship with grief. Well, let me go back to the beginning. I just want everyone to recognize the stages of grief. Listen, like the myths associated with grief, like put those in the toilet. Honestly, I want you to change your relationship with grief, because again, it's going to happen, and we're probably all doing it, whether we know it or not. And really use some tools to be able to change your relationship, to get through it and to get to the other side of it. Because you guys, I can honestly say that although I obviously am still grieving, like, I'm to the other side of grief, right? So it's not where I was in the thick of it, where it was every day, where I was going to the therapist once a week, right? I'm not there. I'm to the other side to say, you know what? I acknowledge the pain that is associated with it. I've accepted the loss of my mom and dad. And now I'm in a new season in my life where I'm able to not only heal myself, but help others heal. And when I can acknowledge the moments when I need to reach out and ask for more support, whether it's with my friends, whether it's finding a new therapist, whether it's going to church, praying a lot, whatever the case may be, right? I had to go through that thickness of it to understand it, to get to this other side of it, to say, wow, like that, like the beauty of the person who I am now, like I can honestly say, like, whether anyone acknowledges it or not, I can acknowledge that I am a beautiful human being because of the things that I've been through. But it's because I acknowledge that I went through those things and I learned from it and I understood it, to say, you know what, this other side of grief has made you such a beautiful human being, whether to anybody else, to yourself, because you understand and you can navigate this world better than you were, during the grief, like the heavy part of it, or honestly than I was before. Like I've had to learn to navigate things much more differently without my mom and without my dad. And it's just made me appreciate life more. It's made me appreciate things and moments more, and just God, it's beautiful. And I want everyone to have that feeling, to get to the other side of it, to process it, to acknowledge it. And so, I wish that for everybody, and I believe it's something that we all can do. And I want to continue to help you guys on this journey to do that. And so I'm just so grateful that we've made it. Oh my God, I almost just started crying. Like, honestly, I'm just so grateful that we made it to this last episode of season 1. And I'm so just honored to have gotten to the other side of it, to be able to help people. And I'm crying. Great. To be able to help people through it. You guys, you're not alone. You're not alone. I promise you, you're not alone. Grief is a journey that can be lonely, but you're not alone. I understand. I really understand. I really, really do. And I may not understand, the loss of a spouse or the loss of a child or a divorce, but what I do understand is grief, right? And I'm just so thankful that you guys have been listening and rocking with me for 10 episodes. I'm just honored that from different countries, people are listening, and I, God gave me the gift and the honor to be able to do this, to help people heal. And so, woo, let me get it together, y'all. Oh my gosh, I'm just so thankful. So thank you all for just rocking with me this season. And I'm so excited for season 2. Like, I'm just so excited for the things that are going to come. I'm going to be doing some things going into season 2 that I'm going to be sharing here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm so, so excited. So if you're not following me on social media, follow me at TTSS Pod. And then also, I think I'm going to do a highlight episode just to highlight some of my favorite moments. And I'll share with you guys some of the exciting things that are coming up on season 2. But I'm just so grateful for you guys, man. And, I love y'all. I love y'all to the max. And, as I always say, to end off this season, my favorite phrase that I tell you guys, as you're going through this journey, as you're trying to navigate what it is, as you're trying to figure out if this is even grief, always, 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 as I tell you guys, give yourself grace and be kind to yourself, because if you don't, who will? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for listening to this season. Season 1 is a wrap. Thank you guys for listening to season 1 of This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we talk about the real of grief, the whole of grief, and nothing but the grief. This whole season was produced by Mike Sick, and all the original music you heard from the season was produced by Jimmy Samaj. And as I said, you guys follow me on social media on Instagram at TTSS Pod, and also visit my website at thistooshallsuckpodcast.com to keep up with the updates coming with season 2. Also, feel free to drop me a line about any questions or topics you want to hear, or any guests you want to see on next season, or if you just want to say what's up. Let me know. Let me know, guys, like how you felt about this season at hello@thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. Wherever you're listening, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and share this podcast, this episode, whatever your favorite episode is, with someone you think it could help. As always, I love you guys so much. Thank you all for rocking with me, and I'm sending you so much love and light in your life because you deserve it. I'll see you guys on season 2. That's a wrap. Mwah.